everyone, it's Rosanna. Do you have a favorite book, a favorite childhood book maybe, and you've always wanted to make a little character from that book, bring a little character like that to life? Today I finally did that. I've meant to do it for years and years. The Country Bunny was my absolute favorite book for several years when I was growing up. Um, and it wasn't just favorite Easter book, just favorite book. The Country Bunny and the Little Gold Shoes, as Told to Jennifer by DuBose Heyward, pictures by Marjorie Flack. I loved this book so much that based on this dedication, I decided I did not like my name Rosanna, and for a couple years I wrote in all my books Jennifer Judy, and really wished that everyone would call me Jennifer Judy, because I thought that if I could have had this book dedicated to me, I thought that would be very, very special. So I really did love it, and it was very influential on me. The story is wonderful. The illustrations are so beautiful, and they've definitely influenced what I like to make and the things I still love. Bunnies and animals, of course. Even the color palette. This is my favorite color of kind of a soft salmon or coral pink. So it's just, I find so much comfort in this book. I have wanted to make a country bunny for years and years out of spun cotton. I have made one when I needle felted, and so now I have a spun cotton bunny. And I want to show you how to make one you can use cotton balls if that's what you have. I'm going to be using a little bit finer fiber today, and also some cotton quilt batting, which you can find at some place like Walmart or a crafting store or someplace like that, or online. So I will do materials later, but we're gonna see how this little bunny came to life today, and I hope that you will be interested in the country bunny. And if you would like to, I several years ago was going to do a country bunny themed make along, and then I never got it done. And in that process, I thought, oh, I'll find some copies of it and send it out to people. And so I did collect several copies, and I just remembered that I saw them all on the shelf and thought, oh, I don't need 6 copies of the country bunny. But I think I might need 3 or 4. Just to be safe. So I'm going to give away 2. So leave me a comment below, and I'll pick someone from these comments, and I will pick someone from my newsletter subscribers to receive a copy of this. And I was thinking, oh, it's so expensive to ship overseas, and I can't get tracking for like less than $50. When I say that out loud, I'm like, is that for real? I can get cheaper shipping, but it won't be tracked. So I was going to limit it, and then I thought, you know what, with the world like it is and the way the US has been acting, I'm just going to extend it. So wherever you live, I will try to get it shipped to you. I hope it will make it if you are international, because I've not had the best luck in the recent years with that. But leave a comment, and I will pick someone. And then, of course, there's a chance with the newsletter too. So I won't ramble on anymore. Let's start making a sweet little bunny. So today I'm going to be using my favorite cotton fiber and some cotton quilt batting for kind of the top coats of our spun cotton creation. You can use a cotton ball. You can use all cotton balls, or a combination of cotton balls for kind of your top fiber, and then the batting, if you want to find some batting. I bought, this is called something like, oh gosh, Wrap and Zap. Is it Wrap and Zap? Zap and, okay, I don't know. That name doesn't make sense to me, so I keep forgetting it. But it is like $5 for a baby quilt size of this cotton batting at Walmart. So you can find it different places, and it's very handy and useful, and it will go a long way. So those are the things that I'm using. I will link this batting. I will link these ponies, which you can find at the Woolery, and that is a very similar sort of fiber to this. And then our other basics, or kind of what we're building this around, is some sort of a pipe cleaner. I offer like some of this stuff in a spun cotton starter supply kit, but I will link a lot of the things that I particularly like. So pipe cleaners, you can use all pipe cleaners, or if you have some thinner wire, I prefer using that for the arms and legs. It's just, for me, I like the way it manipulates a little better. And for this particular bunny, she's got thicker little feet than like when we do a mouse, so you could definitely get away with a pipe cleaner for everything. And I'm using foil, masking tape, scissors, of course, always need some scissors. For my starch, I'm using my cornstarch mix, which I will link the video of how to make that. Very, very simple. Tablespoon of cornstarch and some water, and cook it for a couple minutes, and you have a nice amount of starch to do several projects. Then you might want some kind of cotton fabric. It could be plain fabric. It could be some printed fabric. And then paints, like I'm using watercolor today, but you could use acrylic paint or gouache. I use a little bit of gouache as well today. This is kind of my watercolor plate, and this is the type of acrylic paint that I use. I think it's always handy to have at least kind of a whitish color and a blackish color that you like, for things like eyes or touching up things that maybe don't go well with your, if you use watercolor, that way you can kind of fix mistakes if you need to. And then a variety of paintbrushes. You might need a needle or a straight pin if you do a little bit of sewing. And I do use some thread to hold some of my cotton batting in place. So let's see. And then coffee is optional, and trims if you decide to do like a pinafore apron. And that is just, I think that is it. Have I missed anything? I'll put a little slide, and the slide usually catches anything that I've left out here. Okay, here's our little bunnies. I loved these pages of the I have always been a homebody. I always enjoyed housework. I don't think I am oppressed or brainwashed. Some of us just actually like household chores. So I loved these little bunnies who did all the work around the house. I don't know which one I would have been. I love these little mending bunnies and the cooking bunnies. The washing up bunnies. I don't know that I wanted to do the laundry in the wash tub, but everything else looked pretty fun to me. And then of course there are two that made pretty pictures for the walls, and then here is my mom's favorite bunny, and I needle felted this little bunny for her many years ago. She had 21 children, and so there were pairs, and of course he was left out, and he was the last one, and he didn't have a task. And she said, "You are the most polite of all my children, so I shall make you keeper of my chair, and whenever I come to dinner, you shall seat me politely at table." So and I found a little chair. Anyway, that was one I made years ago, so we'll see if I can. I'm thinking I'll make one of the little girl bunnies with a little pinafore and dress, and we'll see how that goes. I thought briefly about making Mama Bunny with one of her babies, but I think we'll save that for another time. So anyway, I'm going to set this off to the side and get going here. I thought about how I should do the armature, and I think that typically you all enjoy the foil armature over the one where I kind of wrap cotton with either wrap cotton around the wire, or where I wrap, like I take cotton and then I wrap with thread. I've done both of those things, but I feel like I get good feedback for the foil armature and what you're able to accomplish with that. Now, I've been trying to think, like, what size do I make this? Do I make it the size of my mice, or do I make our bunny slightly larger than that? I feel like it should be maybe a little bigger than the mice, but I honestly don't work often in a scale a lot larger than that, and I always feel a little uncomfortable making something bigger. Like, it feels like I feel that way too with painting. I hardly ever use like a big sheet of paper. I use small pieces of paper, and it just intimidates me a little bit to have all of that space. And I kind of feel the same about making something larger. It just feels like I'm like out there, and I don't know, exposed, and I don't know what to do with all of that room. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but it's something that I do experience when I try to go larger. Now, I'm doing this a little bit different today. I don't know if I just always like to try something, not always, but I often think of something kind of new to try. So I'm wrapping the wire around my foil to see if that will work, and actually it doesn't want to work. I think I would have to glue it. It just wants to kind of come away. I guess I could do a little bit more foil around it. I wanted to do a very plump form. Like I don't want to have to use a ton of cotton to plump it out. I just want it to already be a chubby little bunny before I start covering with cotton. Otherwise, I just end up adding layers and layers and layers and layers of cotton, and it's more time consuming. And also, if you're using something besides cotton balls, it can be more expensive. So I'm trying to do the work with my armature, which I think I tell you fairly often, like, the better your armature looks, the better your sculpture will look. So if you do kind of that prep work, it's kind of like anything. If you do the work beforehand, you oftentimes get, you do actually see better results. Now, I don't always practice that. I don't always spend a lot of time on the armature, and I can usually cover over things, you know, with enough layers of cotton I can get to the place I want, but you can get there faster if you just really are more intentional about getting the shape you want to start with your armature. And these little bunnies have a very heart-shaped face, and it's like, they look a lot like, they don't look like Peter Rabbit exactly, but they have that same kind of, she gives them that same sort of profile or pose where the head is not like this so much looking up, but it's like tucked under like that. So it's that kind of anthropomorphic way of styling an animal, because of course if it was a more natural bunny, it wouldn't ever bend its head or tuck its head quite that much, but we want to be able to kind of look onto the face more like a human would be. So I think that's why Beatrix Potter and others who drew a lot of anthropomorphic animals did it that way. I'm trying to... Here, I have too many things here. Okay, bring myself a little bit more foil. And down here, I'm really kind of doing this odd today. I think I want to leave my arms and legs fairly long, and in fact, I might show you today how you can just scab on a little bit of wire if you end up with a stubby arm and you know that you're going to want it, because I want these bunnies, or this bunny, I guess I should say. I might make multiples, but not for this video, because I am sure it will be long enough. If you want them to be able to wear clothes and hold things, sometimes you need to add a little bit more to their arms. Now for the legs, I want them long enough, although it's not, the legs don't have to, the bottom legs don't have to be quite as long, just because you're not going to have to wrap a leg around something to hold your, it's always surprising like how long that needs to be to actually hold something like a little doll or whatever it would be. You have to have a little bit of length there. So I'm gonna, and then since we are going to make this little bunny have a dress, and because I think we're going to sculpt it out of cotton or cotton quilt batting, I'm not going to worry as much about her bottom half being kind of anatomically correct. I want it to be, you know, I don't want it to just be nothing down there, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time getting it just right, because it's not going to show. I'll either kind of, I'll have to show you, but I will sculpt kind of something down here that looks like a petticoat, or I will actually put a petticoat down there. I'm not sure yet how I will decide to do that. So I'm going to add a little bit more foil up here for the head. I want it to have plenty of bulk. and I want to have some chubby cheeks, so I'm kind of giving it this harder strawberry shape. Okay. Let's see how this goes. I think that okay, this tail, of course, looks kooky, but I'm just leaving it long for now, so that once I've built out, you know, the body, however large and plump it gets with cotton, then I can decide how much of this I need to cut off. And you don't have to fully cover all the foil over. It's just a good portion of it should probably be covered. Just it is a little bit easier to cover or to have your cotton stick to the tape than the foil. I don't always cover if I'm making something small, but I find it helps a little bit if it's something larger. And I did order for my for when I ship things. I've always just used plastic packing tape, and I don't know why. It seemed like or maybe I just had never really seen a whole lot of the paper packing tape, but I'm seeing people using more of that, and they do make what is called biodegradable paper packing tape. So I went ahead and ordered that. I'm going to see when it comes if it is possible to use in place of this masking tape, then that's probably, I will replace this masking tape with that, because I would love to use something a little more natural and that didn't contain plastic. So if you haven't done spun cotton before, or made a spun cotton sculpture, I should say, it's very, very similar to paper mache. And the difference is just that you are going to be doing layers of cotton fiber as opposed to paper. So I use this cornstarch paste now. I used to use a school glue mix, so that white school glue with water, and you can do a 1 part to 4 part water, so 1 part glue to 4 part water mix of that. I do recommend the starch for most people. I think it is much easier to work with. And the glue mix is just going to leave you a lot stickier and more frustrated, typically, is what I hear from people. So all you do is you just start with a little starch, and you just put a little thin layer of your cotton fiber over the top, press down with your fingers or brush, and just keep going like that until you start to get a smooth covering of cotton. And if you're using cotton balls, it works just the same way. Just pull your cotton ball apart into kind of thin layers and do what I'm doing. Okay, I'm thinking about this a little bit, because I think that what I should do is I'm going to see if I can just do all of this in one shot. We'll see, like the clothes and everything. So I was going to start covering the body, and then I was like, no, you could just put the clothes on, or build the clothes on, or sculpt the clothes on right now. So if I'm going to do that, what I want to have done before that is I want to have some paws covered to peek out of her dress. So I'm going ahead and wrapping the legs and trying to kind of guess at what size I want the paws or the feet. You can see I don't use a ton of starch for wrapping legs, because I don't really find that you need it. If you wrap tight and then you do starch, you know, on top, it always seems pretty secure to me, and it doesn't seem to need like lots of starch as you're wrapping. Okay, so that seems like an okay little paw to me. And I tend to wrap the legs in, so in towards the body, and that way if I forget, if I can't tell which way I have wrapped, I just usually, when I need to go and tighten up the cotton a little bit, I just usually know I can twist in and I won't be unwrapping something. So you can wrap with different types of fiber. Like there is a sliver, a cotton sliver that is like a long fiber, and that can be used for wrapping something like a leg or a tail, but I just go ahead and use this kind of shorter fiber because it's very smooth, and I can get I think if you're doing something larger than the scale I worked on, then maybe, yeah, the sliver would be better because of its long fibers, but for this, you know, the length of legs that I typically do, this works fine. Okay, I'm going to put a tiny bit more. I just do very, very thin layers, and that keeps the wrapping smooth. If you do a chunkier layer or a thicker layer, then I guess I should say, then the wrapping looks chunkier. A little piece of plant there. Okay, I guess that would have been under the sleeve, but because this will be a long sleeve dress that she has on. And here I'm going to trim the legs to about the same length and kind of put them at that angle so that the rabbit has its little joint and then its foot, and it could even be a little bit like that. I've left in this footage of wrapping the bottom legs. For some of you, I don't think you'll need to watch this part because you've done it before, and it's, you know, it's the same as the upper arms for the most part. But if you haven't done this before, I thought, well, maybe this footage would be helpful, or maybe my camera was a little more focused, or I was in the frame better. So I did leave it just in case it would help a few of you. But definitely you can go ahead and skip to the next chapter if you don't need any more help with wrapping the legs. All I would say for this is that I didn't, these legs aren't, you know, the best looking, or I didn't make them, I didn't really flush them out, so to speak. Like they aren't shaped in a really lovely way where they have nice haunches. The bottom part is all I really cared about, because I knew that that was the only part that was really going to peek out from underneath her dress. So if you're making a rabbit that will not be wearing clothing, you'll want to spend more time on the bottom part of your armature and the bottom part of, you know, the actually covering with cotton or cotton sculpting than what I did, because I didn't have to worry about that because I knew I was going to make a dress over that. But so you just kind of, if you're making a dress, you just need to get the feet, or, you know, the very bottom part of the leg, kind of the size and shape that you want, and just make sure you know that the cotton goes up far enough and is attached, or, you know, has some starch on it on the body. But really, this is quite quite simple, I think, and the key for getting a nice smoothly wrapped leg is just always having a very thin layer of cotton that you're working with. So you see, like, I don't have a big clump. I use a layer that's, you can almost see through, you know. And so if you're using cotton balls, you're not going to be able to get your layers quite so fine, but you can get close. It will work just the same. You just don't want to leave your cotton ball all in one clump. You want to pull it apart into fine little layers, and that's going to help you get pretty good results with just your drugstore cotton ball. So I'm covering her kind of rump or posterior just a little bit, but really I probably wouldn't have needed to do that by the time I go and make her petticoats and skirt and dress. Okay, so I stopped to kind of fuss around with some pieces of my batting and see how I wanted to construct the dress so that I wouldn't just waste time while I'm filming. So what we need to do now is just do a little bit more covering so that everything that I want covered before I put on the dress, or before I kind of sculpt on the dress, is covered and doesn't have to be covered after that, because you can cover it after you put on the dress but then you'll kind of lose that distinction between the layers, or you will lose some of it. And I would like it to look, you know, like the clothes are really a layer on top of the rabbit sculpture itself. So I would like to not have to go back and add any more to the sculpture. I don't know if that's too high. Okay. after I've added our batting, and I'm gonna put on the ear. Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know if I'll put on the ears before the dress, or, but I definitely want this little kind of neck area covered. The ears could be even after I've let everything dry a little bit, or I could do them now, or I could do them after I do the clothes. I don't know that it really matters. It's just kind of like, I think I'm just going to see how manageable it is to do everything. Sorry, we're having one of those days where there are little clouds that come over the sun and change the light all the time. It's very, very windy. Okay, I think I'm just gonna smooth out the head shape. It's not like completely, obviously when I add the ears, that will add a little bit more to the size and shape of it to cover over where I join the batting. Okay, but that's good enough for now, I think. And then, so what I'm thinking is kind of a piece like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to have our batting kind of help us to add this new kind of sculptural layer, clothing looking layer. So I'm going to do kind of like a bodice. I don't know that this is exactly what I'm going to use, because I think I'm going to use this felt that I have. It's a little bit thinner and smoother. This is a thicker batting, and it's nubbier and softer, and tears a little bit easier, but I think this will look more like fabric. So this is kind of the skirt I have, and some sleeves, and I just need to stop and cut, I think, a bodice piece, or it may end up being two pieces, I'm not sure, because we're going to kind of fudge them together with just some of our cotton. So maybe actually I can use this little scrap, and I think these are my sleeves, so I would just need one for the back, so I'll cut that and come back. I just cut another little kind of, I don't know, it's probably a slight rectangle, and I'm just kind of seeing if they pretty much match up. So then I'm just going to put a little starch underneath that. And the batting is, this batting is not as stretchy as some, but you can pull it to meet a little bit. And then we're just going to use some of our fiber to cover over those seams a little bit and smooth them out, and really kind of strengthen that area. But I think I'm going to go ahead and put on the sleeve first, and then I'll just do all of that covering all at once. And I've left the sleeve a little long because I wasn't sure if I was going to turn the end kind of over on itself. I don't know that I really need to. I think I can just shorten it a little bit. But I wanted the sleeve to have plenty of room to come back and kind of give the illusion of a slightly longer arm. Okay, so I'm just going to gloop some starch on that piece of batting. You could do this with a fabric too. You could do this with some sort of anything that's like, I think that would have some cotton in it, or not some sort of a natural fiber, maybe linen, but like where the kind of weave is a little bit more open, that will probably be easier to work with and have the starch hold. I think you could probably figure out a way to make anything, any kind of fabric work if you were patient enough. You can see I'm kind of trying to give some wrinkles like fabric there. And I think you could, if you wanted the clothing, if you didn't have fabric or batting and you want the clothing to have a different texture than the rest of your sculpture to, you know, so maybe your sculpture, you know, looks kind of fuzzy because it's cotton, and then you want different kind of texture for the clothing, you could try doing some paper. And I think you can still use your starch mix because that is an acceptable, this cornstarch mix can work, you know, for kind of a substitute for paper mache paste. And so you could fashion some sort of clothing with paper if you have that and would like to try it. I think that would be interesting to experiment with a little bit. Or of course paper mache, like the actual kind of goo, or the if you make kind of the pulverized paper, that would definitely work. The pulp, I guess, is what you use. Or if you make paper clay, that would be interesting. Okay, so that's, see how that's kind of all, and I've got another little piece of plant there. Okay, and I'll do that on the other side for the sleeve, and then we'll add our skirt. Okay, I'm just finishing up this other side, and I would say when you are doing this, what I'm trying to think how to say this, it's going to feel quite tenuous or fragile what you are doing. Like you're going to think, no, this feels like it could just come apart because it's wet and there's not a ton of, like I haven't covered over these seams with a bunch of stuff or a bunch of material. And you just have to hold it lightly and use your brush lightly or your fingers lightly, and just understand that it's the drying that is going to give this a lot of strength. So yes, what you're doing right now could easily be undone, and so you just hold it so lightly and gingerly, and you just understand that there's going to be a lot of strength here from the starch drying as it dries. I mean, from the starch hardening, I guess I should say, as it dries. So just try not to handle it more than you have to, and just hold it very lightly and trust that it's going to hang together. It will be quite sturdy, I promise, when it has dried. Now for this skirt part, I've already I've cut it to the length that I want as far as like where it's going to hit with her little feet, or at least I think this is about the length I want, and also for reaching around her. I haven't covered my tail yet because I actually don't know. I felt like I really should have a token tail, but I think it's going to be all covered up once I do what I'm going to do inside here. So I decided not to cover her tail, but leave the little nub there, just because, I mean, a rabbit should have some sort of a tail, right? So here you can, if you you could put a little bit of starch here, or you could do what I'm going to do. I was thinking we could use some hot glue, but this is already damp, so I don't think hot glue is going to do us a lot of good. It would be a cheat if you wanted to, if you were able to glue directly onto your dry, your dry armature. And there we've lost our, nope, it was just a quick cloud, a tiny cloud. Okay, so I'm just going to gather it, kind of space out the little tucks. And you could definitely, if you want your rabbit to have her tail peeking out the back, you could kind of do, like you could either just kind of go around and have it come out the dress, or you could leave your dress or pinafore to just be open in the back and have her tail coming out. So if that's important to you, that you have that little cotton ball tail, then do that. And I think that's really cute always to have a little peek of the tail. I'm going to be kind of true to the Oh, look, and I can't grab this very easy, but okay, look. Do you see here? Her tail is peeking out the bottom of her dress, which is coming out way lower than I would think about the tail being. Let me see if my, I don't, the other, yep, she's got her tail peeking out. Oh, a lot of them do. Okay, so maybe I need to figure out how my tail can peek peek out of the bottom of the dress, and maybe the dress needs to be a little bit higher, but that looks like she's, instead of having the tail up like this, she's kind of got it coming out like this. Yeah, and if I think I can kind of make that work. I need to cover the tail now, but I can do that even with the, I can finish getting this dress kind of stuck on here, and then I can deal with the tail. Okay, so what I was going to show you before we went down that little rabbit hole of the tail, or to tail or not to tail, and probably the answer to that is always you tail. You have a rabbit tail. How can you make a rabbit and not show the cute little tails? So I'm gonna say Marjorie Heyward knew what she was doing to have her little bunnies have their tails peeking out. Okay, I'm just twisting this thread around quite tightly, trying to cinch in a little waist here, and also to just hold the batting tightly and make some little gathers. Really, I think my my felt could have been a longer piece, maybe, to get more gathers. I'm going to show more tucks or fullness. Let's see what I can do here, or if I want to. I think I can kind of fluff it out, and then I'll show you how you can add pieces of batting later to make kind of a fuller kind of little gather or ruffle. Ruffle's probably not but just kind of a full spot in the skirt. Okay, so that's on there pretty well, and then we just have to cover it with a little fiber. And I have not painted this batting very often without covering it with a little bit of fiber, so I think we're going to find out if my batting takes paint very well today, but I'm not ready to paint it yet because I want to do a little bit more to this in the way of shaping it. You could definitely just do a bunny who just has a little pinafore on, so not the full dress and then a pinafore over it, but just the pinafore by itself, kind of like well, a lot like Beatrix Potter's Flopsy bunnies. They just had a little pinafore that, you know, is open in the back, so you could see their little tails and see more of their rabbit bodies, which I think there's some good things about that, especially if you're really just wanting to make a rabbit in particular. You might as well celebrate their rabbitness. Okay, I think I'm going to leave a little gap there in the back of the dress where I don't close up the felt, or not the felt, but the batting. And then I just need to decide if I'm going to coat all of this batting with more fiber, or if I'm going to try to paint it, just the batting directly. And here I probably should go ahead and cover my tail, so let's do our little cottontail. This would have been better to do beforehand. Shame on me for thinking that I would do a rabbit and not show its tail. I just wanted to mention here, in this video I'm showing that I do all of the sculpting with the cotton at one time, and I don't stop to do any drying. A lot of times I do at least one break for drying before I start another part of the sculpture, but this time I just wanted to see if it worked okay to just do it in one go or one shot. And for me it does, but it may not work as smoothly for you, maybe just for your schedule, or because as you're working on one part you're kind of unraveling or kind of fussing up another part that hasn't, that isn't dry yet. So if you're having trouble kind of handling the whole thing while it's wet, there's no reason that you have to do it all in one shot. You can definitely break it up into 2 or 3 sessions and do some drying in between. Okay, and then what I'm going to do with this area is I'm going to like close it in. So I'll show you how I do that. So here's some batting, and you can also just use cotton fiber. And I'm going to just push it up in there, but not all the way. And it's going to make like a little petticoat layer. So we're kind of like pretending, we're mimicking that there is some underlayers of skirts. Okay, I've kind of just popped a bunch of stuff in there, and now I'm going to add my starch and kind of connect it to the side and to the legs. So I'm kind of trying to leave it towards the bottom here without just jamming it all the way up to the top of the skirt. I'm just connecting it down towards the bottom, and that's going to give us some fullness, and it's just going to cover over that whole part of the bunny that we didn't really develop. Like we kind of fudged it, and so this is just going to help us to mask that, and it is making the skirt a lot fuller. And this is where it kind of gets worse before it gets better. So if it's a mess and your fibers are kind of going everywhere and you feel like you're not in control, just you are in control. But if you need to step away, you can, and come back when you have calmed down a little bit. This is this is kind of a trick that we're doing here. It's not like, I don't know what I want to say. I feel like this is like, it's not a hack because it's not slick enough to be a hack. It's a shortcut, I guess, that we're taking to get us the look that we want without going through every step. Maybe that is a hack, but I feel like this isn't. I don't really do hacks. I'm not a person who's good at that kind of thing. But I do know how to sometimes skip steps if I don't think they really pay off for this particular sculpture. It's good to learn how to do the whole rabbit form, and I'm planning to do another rabbit video, and we may do several before I am done with rabbits, because I do love them, and I have lots of ideas for rabbit things I want to do. But I thought, why not start with one of my favorite stories, and kind of a formative story for me, but also the artwork really influenced me and my childhood, and I suppose what I have made since I've started making things. A lot of it definitely has echoes of these illustrations. I really love the color palette of this book too, which was printed in the 30s. So they're interesting. I've always loved that coral pink color. That's definitely been a favorite color, I think, because I associated it with this book and my childhood. Okay, I may have to come back and add a little bit more down there, but that's pretty much what I'm gonna do. We'll just see when it dries, like if it's all stayed attached or if I need to just add a little bit more cotton down there to stick everything or to keep everything in place. Okay, so that little dress I think looks cute, and it'll look even cuter once we make a pinafore over the top. And for the pinafore, or apron. I don't know if I'll do the full pinny or just like a half apron, but for that I'm going to show you how I use starch mix and just use a little piece of cotton muslin fabric for that. And also I don't know yet how this batting is going to take color. I know it will take acrylic if I want it to do that, and I usually prefer using watercolor, but it may not want to take the pigment of watercolor, so acrylic will be my fallback if it doesn't do well taking up the watercolor. So I'm gonna decide on these ears. With the ears, you don't have to worry too much. You can leave them a little long and always trim them when they're dry. Trim them down a little bit. I think this is about the size I'm going. Oh, sorry about the changes. So I will just cut 2 like that, and I guess I might as well show you how I attach them. It's not complicated. It's a lot like putting on the clothes. I'm just going to put them here and put some cotton fiber over that, and then I will kind of bulk out the face so that these kind of places where my tape and foil is still showing through are all smoothed out. So let me get one ear attached and then I'll come back and I'll try to talk you through the second one. Okay, I've got one on. If you don't have the batting, you can shape an ear out of cotton, and you just kind of take a little fluff and make a little U, I guess, or a little loop, and then you add some starch and kind of just use your fingers to pinch it into a rabbit ear shape. Now that probably needs a little bit more, like add a little bit more fiber to give it a little bit more sturdy. It's quite thin, which is pretty for a rabbit ear. You could leave it that thin, but my batting ear is quite a lot thicker than that. This would be so pretty, you know, because like a real rabbit ear, the sun will come through it, which I always think is beautiful. So you could definitely leave it that way, but it won't match the thickness of my batting ear. And then also you can do this same sort of technique that I'm doing with the batting with fabric or with paper. You can just cut out the shape, that basic shape that you want out of paper or fabric, and then cover that with cotton fiber. Okay, and I'm going to shape these a little bit. The other one I have kind of how I want, although what's weird is I thought they were the same size, but for whatever reason this one looks a little bulkier. Maybe it's just I got more cotton on it. And you don't have to necessarily cover them with cotton fiber. You can just leave the batting if you're happy with that. And you can, if you want to try to shape the batting, then I would say just get it starchy, and then see if you can kind of fold it and bend it how you want. Okay, that ear looks a little nicer than the other one, so let's see if I can see how I did lose a tiny bit of my definition here because I let some fiber overlap onto my batting. So I'm just using my toothpick to kind of shape that dress color again. I don't know yet if I will. In this, the dresses are very, very simple and they don't have any noticeable color in the book. So I don't know if I will do, but you can definitely, especially if your color or the kind of, if your batting doesn't look great there, or whatever your edges doesn't look great, you can use a little piece of lace or something to make a color, and that will cover over many sins. A lace color too, besides covering over things that aren't particularly nice looking, is also kind of it's a pretty little detail, and it kind of distracts the eye too. So it does a lot of things. It's useful for a lot of reasons. Okay, her little bunnies have very close set ears for the most part. They always are holding their ears very closely together. In the book, the grandfather bunny asks Mother Cottontail, and do they always hold their ears so prettily? And she says, yes, they do. They've been taught to hold their ears proud and pretty. I don't think she doesn't say proud, but that's kind of maybe implied. Okay. This ear is much nicer than this ear. Can I make that ear look better? This is the fuss around stage where you just can keep going until you're satisfied, except be careful that you don't get your head way out of scale to the rest of, if you just keep adding and adding, your head can start to be a little bobbleheady. So watch out for that. I'm sorry that I just bumped the camera. Okay. Now I'm going to turn the camera off, make sure I have this like I want it, with chubby cheeks and the ears pretty well matching. But you've seen what I do now, and you can work on this yourself until you get it to the form or the shape that you want, or are willing to settle for. It's okay if you don't quite get to what you were hoping for. Just do your best this time. And you can always make another one. This is just, even I started one this morning, and I decided it was not, it was a little larger than this, and I just did not enjoy working with something that large. This is quite a bit larger than my mice, so I think I've succeeded in scaling up a little bit, but the one I did this morning was probably too far outside of what I'm used to, and it just wasn't feeling right to me. So I just set it to the side, and I may actually, that would be an interesting video, I may cut it apart and make something else out of it. I think like a little toy figurine. So that might be an interesting video, is just taking something that wasn't successful the first time and reusing it for something different. Okay, I think she's looking pretty good. I want to get this face a little bit more symmetrical, so I'll do that, and then come back and we're going to paint. I think I'm going to be a little nervy and paint her fur parts while it's wet, because, well, maybe I shouldn't. I'm not gonna say yet, because I maybe should think what I really should do and what I've shown before and what would be most helpful. So I'll come back in a second. I wanted to show you something. Sorry, I always say I'm done and I won't come back for a while. I wanted to show you, can you see this? This lighter area is a little air pocket. So if you leave that and you don't get it pressed down, it will not take the paint as well as these other areas, and so you'll have a light spot in your paint. And I wish that that wasn't true, and it's kind of annoying, because I would like to leave some parts that were a little bit softer and not as where I hadn't pressed the cotton down so much, and you could just have a little squishy feel, because there'd be a little air in the layers. But if you want your paint to take evenly, you can't have a lot of those little areas where there's air. It just doesn't work with the paint. So that's just something to know, and you want to work those out if you want to have a nice even coat or color to your paint. I'm just going to add a little bit here. See how I'm just kind of doing this for a little nose area. Okay, so you don't have to do this part, but I do want to mention that I fuss around with this face later on because something just isn't quite right with her face or her head shape. I couldn't figure it out. Finally, I pressed in some eye sockets for her, but I did this when my sculpture was already dry, and that made a huge difference for me. So I would recommend that you make some indentations in the eye area. It will just make the face shape so much more pleasing, and it makes the eyes look nicer. Everything looked better. So I do recommend doing a little nose area if you want to try that, but also make a little concave indentation in the eye area now. While it's wet, it will be easier to do. And the other thing I want to mention is I just am doing one drying time, but some of you who haven't done sculpting with cotton will find that after you dry, you'll have low spots in your sculpture, and that's just because you didn't get the cotton applied super uniformly, and so you may have to go in after that drying time and patch in a few places, and that's normal, but I didn't have to do that because I have a little more experience. What I decided is I'm going to let her dry a little bit, and then I'm going to paint the fur areas while it's still damp, but not quite as damp as it is right now. And the reason I'm choosing to do that is I don't want the brown to bleed down into the cotton fiber for her dress area, and that can happen. And if you're using acrylic, then don't worry about it, and you can kind of do whatever you want. But I'm going to try to use watercolor for her dress, and we'll see if that works. It may not, and then it wouldn't matter. But anyway, so I'm just gonna let her dry a little bit before I continue with the painting. And let me just show you how, because I think I'll do this off camera, but let me show you how you add to this skirt or the dress if you want to add some volume. You can do this with a piece of batting, or you can do it with just a fluff of cotton. Okay, you're just going to add a little chunk, and that will just add a little bit of volume, and you can shape it into, see that, how we've got kind of, tell me what that's called on this skirt. I don't know what to call that exactly. I just know it's a full gathered skirt, and you have these little kind of voluminous places, and then it's like a hill and a valley. So you can go around and do that, and with any of your little scraps that are on your table, you could do the same thing with your fabric. If you're using fabric, you would just kind of have to hide the edges a little bit, but we're going to do the little apron together, and I think I can show you how I do something similar with fabric. I have even done a little, long ago, I did a whole sculpture out of just cotton muslin for my sister. It was really interesting, and I should do it again. But yeah, you can sculpt out of almost anything, so just use what you have. You might be surprised what a difference the material makes in what you make. Okay, so that adds some, I think it looks a little fluffier, and the back was kind of smushy. Sorry. So I'm going to add a little bit more like that around and let her dry partially. Now for drying, you just can let it air dry, and the cornstarch mix dries much, much faster than if you're using the PVA or school glue mix. Maybe if you let it sit out for a few hours, I would check back, and it may be starting to feel quite a lot dry enough to attempt the painting and see if you get any bleeding. You can also just set, someone suggested using a food dehydrator, which I think is a great idea, and I have one. I just need to bring it up and have it upstairs where it's more accessible. They said that worked really well, and that way you don't have to worry about my other trick, which is using an oven or a toaster oven. With a food dehydrator, you're not going to worry about scorching your piece at all. It just can't get to that temperature. And of course, I'm sure it uses a lot less power, so that's a really great way. You can set things over vents, or anywhere where there's air movement is going to speed things up a lot. For if you use the oven because you really are in a hurry, and definitely if you've had your oven on anyway, then you know, pop it in there after the oven's off and take advantage of some of that residual heat. But anyway, what I do is I just preheat my oven to 350 and then shut it off and set the thing in. If you want to do it with the oven on, just keep it below 250, like 200 or 250 is what I find to work well without giving you actual browning on your sculpture. And a toaster oven, same sort of temperature. Just check every 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and a lot of smaller things with that don't have very thick layers of cotton and starch should be dry in about 20 or 30 minutes, maybe an hour for something that is bigger and has thicker layers of cotton and starch. So that's kind of the drying, and I usually don't say something and I get questions about it, but no, there's no reason that you have to use any sort of heat for drying. It's just because I usually try to get these shot all in one day if I can, and so I have to kind of I have to make the drying time faster so that I can do that, but air drying is ideal. Okay, let me show you a little bit because unfortunately, like I sometimes do, I wasn't thinking very hard and didn't hold our little bunny up where you could see very well. So all I've done is just added a little watercolor. I start pretty light and build up the color. I'm just going with a mix of burnt umber and kind of like a khaki sandy brown for my little Cottontail bunny, and then I like to leave a little area of white. And there, I've got plenty of pigment, didn't I? You can always, I don't want to move that cotton that I put there. You can always kind of take your brush and dilute the color a little bit. Okay. I like to leave, I think I got interrupted, but I like to leave some white area around the eye and that little cheeky, I don't know what I should call that, a little mouth area, jowls maybe. I want to leave those fairly white too. I'm not doing the ears super pink because in fact she has very, very little pink on the ears on her bunnies. I'm putting on more pink than what hers are, and the interior of the ear, it has a lot of dark in it, so I guess I'm gonna brush a little darkness into that shadowy area to be true to, boy, it's hard to keep my exposure rate today. Okay, I'm still migrating towards the bottom of the screen, so I apologize. I must just have my camera kind of set in a spot that's hard for me to see around. Okay, I keep getting a little bit more pigment on than I want, but you can either take it off with some water or you can go over with a little white acrylic. And she doesn't do any pink accents. That probably has to do probably with what was available. You know, she did kind of simplified, I think, palettes of color for the printing. I just want to put a tiny bit of pink there for the nose. I'm not going to do my pink cheeks. I'm going to resist that today to be kind of true to a Marjorie Flax illustrations. I think I said Marjorie. Yeah, I said Marjorie Heyward earlier. I don't know what's wrong with my brain sometimes. DuBose Heyward is the author, and then Marjorie is the illustrator, and she did a lot of like books. There's one that's quite famous, I think, about ducklings. I have a few that I kind of look for vintage copies of them, and I haven't found yet, but I know she's got some out there that were more, she illustrated a lot of children's books, and some of them were much more successful than the Country Bunny. I don't know really how many people are familiar with it or would have been familiar at the time. Now it's not very well known at all, but I think it would have been a little bit, you know, more people would have recognized it at a certain point. Okay, so that's where we are, and then just a bit of paint on the paws. You could use coffee, and of course you can use acrylic and gouache and anything here. I don't think there's any kind of paint or ink. Maybe you could use ink. Anything will work on cotton, or at least I find that that's true. Okay, I want you to see I've mixed up over here a little pool of a mixture of 3 colors that I'm trying to get kind of that dingy-ish vintage coral color. I really was tempted to do aqua or turquoise or teal or whatever you want to call it, because that features in the original illustrations. And the reason I went though with this pink is that that's really the color that I associate with the Country Bunny book, and with what she wears. She wears that as a child, and then she also wears it like in the cover. She's got almost the same as the actual dust jacket, but that's kind of the color of the book. And I'm not going quite as wide. That copy that I just showed you is one that's been printed more recently. The copies that I had, and I have many, I think I have 6 copies of it, and you know, okay, I'll put that in the intro. Let's do a giveaway. I bought them thinking that I would give them away years ago, give away a few copies of them, and I never did. Like I didn't make a spun cotton bunny. I just didn't get to it at Easter time, and so obviously I don't know that it will get to you before Easter, because I'm not sure when I'm going to get this video published. But you will have it for the next Easter time, and it's a wonderful story. So let's say I need to look at my copies, but I think I have at least 2 decent copies that I can send out to people. So the like real instructions will be in the intro. But it'll be weird probably, because I will have announced it there, but then you'll hear me kind of thinking through how to do this at this point in the video. But that's how I have ended up filming lately, as I do the intro kind of last when I've figured out what I've really done. I don't always know how these little make-alongs will go. I like to have more of an idea and a plan if I can, but I don't always have that much time to work them out ahead of time. So anyway, that would be great for me to I don't need to have 6 copies of it. But anyway, this is the coral color that I associate with the book, and there's a beautiful illustration in there of the sunrise on Easter morning. And I won't, if you don't know this story, I guess I won't spoil kind of the dramatic part of the story, but she watches the sun come up, and it's actually a very sad part of the story because she thinks she's failed. But the sunrise is this beautiful coral pink because, like I said, the book was printed with kind of a limited color palette, and so they really made use of those colors over and over again in different ways. And I think that was, talked about that before, but sometimes doing things like that is so effective, where you limit yourself in some way, you impose some sort of structure or restriction creatively, and that can really push you to create in ways that you wouldn't normally. And that's one of the things I struggle with. Like, it's Nitty's birthday, and she's having a friend party this weekend, and she's like, all the girls will want to do crafts. They like when you do crafts, and I was like, what kind of craft do you want to do? And Nettie's not a big crafter, really. She makes with me sometimes, and she will again sometime come on here, I'm sure. But it's not like her favorite thing, and she especially doesn't like crafts in particular. When I say craft, like, here's what we're all going to be making, and here's exactly how you do it. You know what I mean? Here's how to make yours look just like mine. She really, really doesn't enjoy that. So in the past, I'll have crafts ready for the girls at different parties we've had, and some of them really enjoy it, and others it's not their thing, and it's not Nettie's thing really to do that. But anyway, she thought the other girls would enjoy it, but I'm having a hard time deciding what to do because it's too open for me at this point. Like, I need someone to help me narrow. You know how when it's like, well, you could do anything, and then you're like, I don't know what to, I just have no idea what to choose. Somebody give me some sort of structure or restriction that will help me to make this decision. Okay, so this has taken pigment a little bit unevenly, as far as like I can see where I have my cotton fiber and then where it goes to just the plain batting that hasn't really been covered, but I don't see that as a big I don't see it as something that's like too off-putting or weird. I think it just makes it look like it has a little bit of age to it, and is just not too like I always say, samey. It has a little bit of variation to the shades, and I may do, see here is, and I was right in kind of assuming or guessing that this batting doesn't take the pigment as well. You can see the darker spots are where I've got my actual cotton fiber. Like, this doesn't have any cotton fiber over it, and it's not wanting to take up the pigment as well, but you can get there. You just have to do more coats of it. And I'm not being super particular about getting every single part of this absolutely saturated, especially back here where it's the tail. You can see it's got a little bleed of pink, but that's okay because I was going to come back kind of when this is all done and add a little bit of fuzzy cotton to the tail. So I'll just wait and do that at the end and try to take care of that little bleeding that we've had there. This all looks okay to me underneath, and I'm not really going to do anything there. So that's what we've got for our little dress. It did fine, and I know acrylic, you would have no trouble with that. Gouache probably helped me to have some of that gouache in the mix for covering, but I definitely think you can make it work with watercolor. Like, kind of the worst case scenario is you would have to do 2 coats to get it to the saturation or depth of color that you want. But I'm gonna let this dry now. So we're gonna do kind of a tiny little nose, not her features for the nose, and now I forgot to look it up. But the word that came into my head as I was doing some yoga was maw. M-A-W? Is that a word? And is it a word that means the mouth area? Now I have to look it up, but that is the word that came to my mind for what I've been trying to describe here. So I'm really trying to speed up. This video is so much longer than I expected, and I really apologize. I'm just going to show you doing one eye, and I'm going to have suggestions for how you can do eyes maybe a little bit in a way that's less scary and maybe hopefully has a little better success rate. You know, worst case scenario, your eye doesn't end up in the wrong or in the right place, and you have to just cover over with some acrylic paint, or even start with a little more cotton and then acrylic paint and go again. I've done that quite a few times, but my best suggestion is just don't I used watercolor, and then I had a little bleeding. So I mean, you can use watercolor, but try to get your brush quite dry if you're doing that. Otherwise, acrylic is not going to bleed as much. Or gouache, and if you had like a felt tip pen or marker, that would also give you a lot more control. And I tried to leave like a little white spot, but I did that and then realized later that I didn't really have it, you know, the little white spot that makes the eye look like it's shining. I decided I didn't like the place I left it, so I just ended up painting over it and then doing the white spot with acrylic. So I could have saved myself a lot of time by just painting on a completely black almond shape for the eyes, and then coming back and doing the shine spot or the white spot with acrylic. And because I had some bleeding with my watercolor, I kind of sharpened up the edge with some white acrylic, or it's an off-white acrylic paint. And I do like to do that sometimes anyway if I don't have enough white around the eye, because it just gives it more contrast and sets it off a little better. The eye isn't as lost in the darker brown color around it. So it's handy to have it's handy to have some sort of acrylic paint to do, you know, to fix mistakes or add highlights or details like that. And then I'm still fussing around with the face, trying to get it to how I think it should, you know, how I think my country bunny should look. So I added a little darkness to her nose because I thought that looked more like the illustrations, and I widened it out just a touch more than what I had originally done. And she's getting closer, but the thing that really changes it is when I pop in her eye sockets here in a little bit. Oh, and go ahead and add you know, a few details to the paws if you would like to. I'm just trying to add a little bit of cotton fiber here as the tail. So I put a little starch on, and now I'm just trying to stick that cotton down without really. I'm just going to leave it like that and see if when it dries, if it's attached well enough that it will hold. I just wanted some plain cotton that has no starch on it. I'm cheating a little bit by attaching it or using a little starch to stick it, you know, the very ends of it to the dress. So we'll see if that works. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Something is still off to me about her little face, but I will move on to. Okay, I did one more little tweak, which helped a lot. I probably should have sculpted the face this way, actually made a little concave place there for the eye, kind of make a socket, because this way we've got kind of a brow here. So that really improved the look of her face, and I think it's gonna hold. I just kind of collapsed my sculpture a little bit, but next time I will just know to sculpt it that way, and that makes the rabbit's face just a lot prettier and more graceful to have that shape there. So some of you are probably like, well, duh. But I haven't done a rabbit in a while, and actually I haven't done a rabbit in a really long time. So I've done so many mice. So anyway, that was good to see that really improved the look of her. Here, sorry, here is a penny. Like, this will be the kind of more full length, so I wanted to show you how my cheater's way of making a penny. So I took this is an old nightgown that I had of Hilda Pullman's, and it had been kind of falling apart, so I reused kind of a seam for the bottom, and then I did a running stitch up here. And I'm going to reuse this part too. I like to reuse the seams if I can, so that I don't have raw edges if I can help it. And then I'm just going to kind of hold it up there, and I kind of eyeball where it looks like an armhole should go. This is not an exact science. Usually it works out for me. Occasionally I do get it in a place that doesn't work very well, and I have to scrap my apron. But I think if I'm kind of, the second hole is the one that is the make or break. And you could, I mean, you can fudge it a little bit, but you kind of want to get it in the ballpark. I don't worry too much about the hole because you can't really see it once you kind of pull it back onto the arm. And sometimes I kind of work that raw edge under, and sometimes I just leave it if it doesn't look that visible. So in this case, it's not too noticeable to me right now, and I don't know that I will worry too much about it. I'm going to put this, I think, trim up here. But I'm toying with this idea of having the aprons just come off so that I can switch them out, because I do love a penny, and so I couldn't resist. But I know it does cover up, you know, a lot of the dress that we made. But I just love a rabbit and a penny. It's a Beatrix Potter thing, isn't it? But this apron will be very beautiful too. So I'm going to kind of finish that one up, and I'm going to see if I can figure out a way that these can kind of go on and off, maybe with a little snap. Maybe just I might just do it where I oftentimes, if I just want to hold something on, I wish I had, do you know what I'm talking about? There are little straight pins that are called sequin pins, and they're like half the length of a regular straight pin. I love those. I have some in a pin cushion, but I don't think it's in this room. I'll have to go look for them, but I sometimes just hold things in place with a straight pin. And while I have the straight pin out, I'll mention my rabbit is standing pretty well. Her dress is kind of, and tail are kind of almost, she's not standing like quite at the angle she would if she was able to just stand freely and balance. So what I do is, for animals that don't have a tail that can come out and balance and make the tripod, I just stick a straight pin in their rear, and then you have a little tripod to balance them on, and the straight pin is not very noticeable usually. So that's usually my trick for getting an animal to stand on its, just, you know, look like it's standing on its two back legs. So let's see what I can do to finish this up. Okay, I wish I had time to make her a little egg, like the one that the country bunny has in the story that she takes to the sick little boy. It's like a sugar egg, you know, and it has a beautiful scene inside. I wouldn't be able to do a scene inside. I'd like to make her an egg that just mimicked that, but I don't have time this week. I need to get knitting. I need to make her birthday cake tonight. So this is how she ended up. I just did my straight pin trick to hold the penny. I think it's really cute. Of course, she looks maybe a little bit more Beatrix Potter-ish with her kind of Victorian-looking, or maybe Edwardian-looking penny. So, but I can switch it out, or just leave her in her dress if I want to. And I just attached, like I said I thought I would, I just took a little strip of this fabric and hot glued it on for the waistband and ties. And then I can just tie on this apron if I want to, I think. I don't know that I can do a bow, so I'm just going to do a tie like that. And that's how she looks in that little apron, which is cute. Maybe I should trim it up a little bit more, or maybe it's gathered too much, I don't know. I actually think she turned out looking not too far from what I was attempting. See if I can find the close-up of the kids again with the baby bunnies. Not bad. Definitely recognizable, especially since I went with the coral color. Now, I will film my intro last, which is what I've been doing lately. And so right now I think what I'm going to do is I have 2 copies extra copies of the Country Bunny, and I will offer one to someone in the comments here, and one will go to someone who replies to my newsletter, just so that I can kind of give some love there to the newsletter crowd, and also here. So if you want a copy of the Country Bunny and the Little Gold Shoes, there will be information about it that you probably already heard at the top of this video. So I'm not gonna draw this out. I really have other things I've got to get onto, but I'm really glad that this worked out today, and I hope I can get it edited and out to you so that you have a little bit of time before Easter. But obviously this is not specific to Easter the way we've made it. It's just a bunny, and of course you can give her something Eastery to hold, but she's an all seasons bunny in my opinion, and you could switch out her aprons through the seasons and give her other little, you know, props and things, and I do think she's very, very sweet. So this is a dressed bunny. We will probably make just like a naked bunny, and a bunny toy. I would really like to make kind of a folk style bunny toy. So we'll do several bunny make-alongs, but I think this was really fun and sweet, and I'm glad I kind of figured out how to make a country bunny of my own. And I appreciate so much all of you who come along on these little make-along journeys and see where we end up. You are so kind and encouraging, and you teach me lots of things, and you are just a wonderful creative community to have here. So I appreciate you so much, and I just thank you for all your support, and I hope that you continue to find things that give you joy and comfort in this world. Go back to some children's books that meant something to you if you need to, and maybe see if you can create a little character to keep you company in this sometimes cruel and scary world. So sending love to all of you and wishing you very happy making.